and I will open the chat box. So the chat box is open. This is if you've got any questions you'd like to ask while I'm demonstrating. But for those of you who are staying on for the chat afterwards, you're more than welcome to save your questions up and I can answer you live. If I do, it's just a matter of if I see the questions as they pop up. And if I do see them, I will respond there and then. So hello and welcome. I think we're on week 6 of the Zoom Flower class, as this autumn series of classes. Obviously, we're getting closer to Christmas. So as I start making the arrangements, I'm still going to keep my decorations on my arrangements autumn themed, because I haven't gone up into the loft yet to find my Christmas decorations. So I think you'll be able to see how you will be able to adjust, what you add onto your structures. I shouldn't really call it an arrangement today, your structures. You could quite easily zhuzh them up a little bit and make them more festive if that's what you want to do. So I have seen some fabulous photographs of your elevated bonfire design. So well done for those of you who have completed your arrangements. I think the only query I got about making the elevated design was how stable the little legs were. So if you remember, I used the kebab stick to make my legs and I cut it down. So actually I had 4 kebab sticks together, short kebab sticks bound together. And I guess if you did find that was a bit wobbly for your straw wreath, you could always remake the legs and just cluster together some more stems of some more of your kebab sticks just to make it a little bit more robust. But I guess that's what it's about, isn't it? It's the practice. You've come to the class, it's about practicing your technique. And if you ever wanted to make that project again in the future, you'd know that you just needed to add a bit more oomph to your stems. But I loved what you made. And in fact, I think out of all of them, I don't think anybody went particularly with the stick look, with the silver birch twig look to actually replicate fireworks, but certainly you did it with the colours. I saw some artificial poppies in the oranges, which may be switched out, I understand, for red poppies for Remembrance Sunday. We had some that looked very meadow-like with lots of dry flowers and I think a few artificials put in. And if you remember, one was made with a bunch of flowers, I think 2 bunches of flowers from a local supermarket, and that features lots of dry flowers. So as ever, I am always amazed about your ingenuity about how you interpret the projects. So before we get on with today's project, let's talk about next week. So you can see in front of me, I have got a plastic bottle. I'm going to be using a plastic bottle and we're going to make a cuff. I'm going to cut out a band of the plastic because that is going to be the hidden structure for making what I'm calling a cuff, like a bangle. You're not going to wear it. We're going to have them upended on the table. I'm imagining that you could put this over a little glass dish and perhaps do a little simple flower arrangement that comes out through your cuff, or to have a pillar candle inside. So I have saved this bottle of sparkling water, which must have come left over from the summer. We don't normally have fizzy drinks at home, so I have been saving this for quite a long time. You don't need to go for a bottle of this size. This is a 2-litre bottle. If you just have the conventional, smaller drinking bottles that take about half a litre, that would be fine. And in fact, it doesn't need to be a bottle. It may be that you've got something you can cut down that might be a yogurt pot, something like that. Obviously, if it's an individual serving yogurt pot, you're going to end up with something quite small. If you go with one of the larger sort of family-size yogurt pots, you'll end up with something bigger. As a preference, I would say to have something straight-sided. So rather than, I think sometimes the larger yogurt pots have a slight sort of fluted shape on them, but you need something to act as your template for this little cuff design. Now, I'm going to be using for my design to make up the plant element of my design. I have been going for walks and saving these Scots pine needles. So these are dried. I've picked them up from the floor. If you're lucky and you've got a Scots pine tree near you, and perhaps in the stormy weather we've been having recently, you've actually been able to pick up a little branch of the pine, you may well be making your little structure using the green Scots pine, which will eventually dry out. And I think you could probably imagine what we're going to do is we're going to be using double-sided sticky tape. This is practically the same colour as my hair, this. And imagine this is my cutout of my my drinks bottle, we're going to stick these on all the way around the edge of the cuff to make your basic structure for your little design. And then it's a matter of adding on. If you choose to do so, it may be that you might want to, if you've got Formium 10X, and I showed you that technique for ripping the Formium 10X using a pin holder, like a comb, you could start to have little fluffy bits going around. You may be having, adding berries, baubles and beads to really sort of glam up your look. So as ever, it's about the technique we're concentrating on and the extra effort you put in with actually the floral element, whether that's artificial, natural, berries, whatever it is, that just be something you can build on, when you're working after class. So I shall put those away, and then let's talk about today's class. So for today, I am going with my glass dish. So this is the dish that I did the sticky tape over the top and laid on the roses. Remember, we pinched out the centre of the roses and I used some of the petals on the edge. I did have a question about how I clean my sticky tape off. And for me, my double-sided tape, I put my dish in the washing up bowl when I'd finished doing my hand washing. So it's sort of, lukewarm water with a little bit of fairy liquid in. And I just sat it in there as if you would if you were soaking a label off a jam jar. And I found that I just had to, scrape it a little bit with my fingernail and all my stickiness came off. If you do end up with a residue on your container, I like to use a little bit of white spirit on a cloth and just wipe it away. But I would say for me, my double-sided tape came off remarkably easily. But if you're having problems, how about you leave me a suggestion in the comments as to how you get rid of your sticky tape residue? Or of course, you can always chat with me in the free Facebook group. So I have gone for a round container like this. And inside, I'm putting a smaller container. So the purpose of this is again to provide the mold, the shape, the template for the structure that we're going to be using. I'm getting a suggestion for nail varnish remover. So that might be something actually you've got to hand rather than white spirit. So you can check out your bathroom cabinet is sort of going down into the shed or the garage for your white spirit. I guess they're the whole same family of things, aren't they? So in the centre, I have got a sundae glass, an ice cream glass, and I'm going to put that in the centre. Now, this ice cream glass, I don't know whether you're picking up in the video, it is fractionally taller than the rim of my container. So a suggestion, are you using a plastic dish? Yes, that's fine for you. Yeah, plastic's fine. This is purely about creating the mold on which to make your, what we're calling armature. If you want to be a bit fancy, we're making an armature out of sticks. You want to be a little bit higher the central ball because the armature is going to be slightly shaped all the way around, a little bit like those metal dory frames you get. You can either get the really flat ones or you can get the ones that are slightly shaped around the edge. And that is, you want to visualize something that's kind of the shape, the profile that we're going to go for. So it doesn't matter what you actually make your template on, whatever happens, whatever works for you. The only thing you need to be sure of is, it may well help you, is you might need something to weight down that central container so it doesn't slide around. And a pin holder should, perhaps a pin holder, if you've got one of those to hand, would weight it down in place. So I'm not going to use a pin holder today because when I did my practice, I found it wasn't moving around. But if you do find things are slopping around a bit, you might need to weight your central container down. And the other thing we're going to be using is lots and lots of kebab sticks. And I am going to be using my hot glue gun. So this design would be possible to do without a hot glue gun, but you would have to tie your individual sticks together. So it's not going to be a quick project if you haven't got a hot glue gun. Having said that, don't let that put you off. I went to a workshop many, many years ago when we met, actually, when I think about it, made a structure that was quite similar using silver birch twigs. And I used rose wires that I covered in the brown stem tape and sort of lashed that round. And it was perfectly possible to do, but it will take you a considerable number of hours to do. So for speed, the hot glue gun is your friend. It does, you need to be a little bit careful with your workmanship, because it does, as the glue dries, it does leave that hard, milky texture. And of course, with a hot glue gun, it gives you that instant fix, but it's not a sort of long-term fix. So if you like this structure and you use it over the next couple of weeks, and perhaps you put it away in your flower arranging cupboard, you do run the risk that if you're a little bit rough with it, it may well all fall apart. But perhaps that's a good thing, because then you can recycle the sticks and make yourself another container. We're always having that discussion, aren't we, about when we make the structures, is what do you do with them when you've enjoyed them the first time around. So I would say this isn't it'll last you well enough, you know, but once you put it in storage, I just think it's going to be prone to being damaged. So manage your expectations just for that. So what I'm going to do here is I will bring the camera over on the edge, but just to talk about a couple of things. Obviously, a kebab stick's got one spiky end and one blunt end. For me, I am going to cut my sticks in half, but do not cut your sticks in half until you've done a little bit of measuring, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm going to have one end with a point and one with two blunt ends. That doesn't bother me at all. If you want more of a streamlined look, it may be that you might want to cut your pointed end off first before you cut to size. And also, if you wanted to up your game a little bit, this structure reminds me a bit of that game Pick-Up Sticks. Do you remember when you had the coloured sticks and you used to drop them on the tabletop, and then you had to, I think with one hand, you had to move the sticks in a coloured order, and once you'd release the black stick, you could use that one to hoik the other ones out. So using Pick-Up Sticks as our inspiration, it may be that you want to up your game. You might want to paint the ends of your stick a colour, or you might want to wrap some real wire on the end, or a little bit of wool knotted on the end, just to give an extra textural detail. So as well as the main sticks, I've also got with me, I didn't buy them, a sort of a tangle of sticks here, which I picked up on a dog walk. I have got some silver birch twigs. And again, it's quite a small quantity. I've got some gnarled, beginning to look a bit licheny. This is elderberry, and then a small quantity of leaves. I've got the ginkgo leaf. I don't know whether I mentioned on, I don't know if there's a Facebook Live or a YouTube Live, that you're supposed to be able to make little butterflies out of this leaf. And I picked them up to have practice, and I can't get it to work. I think my stems are too dry. But the theory was that you folded the leaf in half, and then you wrapped the stem around this little pointed bit. And when you opened it out, it looked like a butterfly. I think I'm going to have to pick the leaves off the tree fresh, because once they fall onto the ground, this bit gets too brittle and breaks. So I'm going to put those leaves I can't use to make butterflies to good use. And I just got a tiny little cluster of, I can't remember the name of these now. The common name is firebush, pyracantha. It's a very thorny bush, and we've got it growing outside our living room window. It's a sort of burglar deterrent. So anybody trying to break in is going to have to get scratched first of all. And I'm just thinking this is more about the structure. I'm going to get my structure right, layer on some interesting twigs, layer on a few autumn leaves and berries, and that is going to be the project. So I'm going to bring the camera overhead so you can see what I'm doing. Hot glue is on, and my kebab sticks are ready. I think I might just get my sticks out before I start so I don't rattle around too much. And I'm also going to cut my stick using my secateurs. So let me bring that second camera over. So here we are with my glass dish with my little sundae glass placed in between. So I'm going to cut my kebab sticks. They're going to balance a little bit over the edge. I'm not sure if the camera's picking that up. The rim of the little sundae dish is here. I'm going to put my kebab sticks. It overhangs by about 1.5 centimetres and overhangs the other end. If you're too skimpy with your sticks, you'll find that they fall down in the well between the two containers. You're balancing them between the inner rim and the outer rim. And I know that to be secure, I just need to cut my kebab sticks in half. if you want to measure this, you go ahead and measure, but I'm eyeing it up and I know that that is about right. And therefore, once I've got the dimensions right for one, I can go through and cut my other kebab sticks to length. Now, I'm going to preempt your next question. How many kebab sticks will you need? And I'm going to give you the answer I always give you. I don't know. Because, of course, it'll depend on how dense your coverage is going to be with your kebab sticks and also how big your container is. So I've just bought a bag of kebab sticks and I've probably used, for my practice piece, a quarter of them. So it's entirely up to you. Once you go round to create a complete circle, that you may decide that you want to add a bit more structure and you might want to go around a second time with some of your kebab sticks. So what we're going to be doing here is using the hot glue gun, and I want you to imagine the letter A. I put those down like that, and or two sides for triangle. But it's that sort of shape you need to be thinking of, because that is how we're going to do all our gluing. Now, the only thing I am going to alternate when I do this is because I've got some points on my kebab sticks, I will make sure that I alternate whether my pointed end is at the bottom or at the top, just so it doesn't look, unless you're going to do them all the way around, as a pattern, I'm preferring to go slightly random. So we're getting a question there, do you cut them all the same size? Yes, they are cut all the same size. So I've got that one there. It does glue immediately, but as I say, the glue is quite brittle. Now you can see that I did an A shape there. I don't have to make them all identical. This is going to look, quite, although it's straight-sided sticks, I sort of go for an organic look. So it may be that the next one, I might want to draw the uprights together a little bit closer, like that. So you can get some variation in your work. And as I put them around my container, I'm actually going to vary the placement as well. So the first time I'll put them in like this, and then I will take the next pair and overlap them like that. So I'm getting sort of equal coverage. It looks like a zigzag shape, if you can imagine like that. I'm sort of zigzagging my way down the container. Well, it's not as zigzag as it is, sort of coming round offset. What I did when I made my first piece is I would glue to order. It depends how you feel about this, because sometimes you just want to vary how you're placing the sticks on the container. So first of all, I am balancing the sticks on my container. The aim is it's not going to be glued to the container. The container is purely the template on which you're working on. And I'm going to glue everything sort of one at a time in place. So balancing there. And then when I come to add in the next placement I've glued together, can you see there that the first one went up and down? That was my quite tight A-frame. But the second one is going across and it's touching. I can see it's touching the kebab stick there. So in effect, you want to make sure that you are gluing these, gluing them sufficiently in a sufficient number of places that it holds firm, but not so much glue that it's all glue and nothing else like that. So I'm getting a little sort of, this is where the sort of pickup sticks comes to mind. So again, the next one, you can start to speed up a little bit once you get the sort of hang of it. I know that I need to glue a couple of centimetres down from the top of that little cane there, the kebab stick. Just hold it in place for a couple of seconds. I then offer it up. Where's it going to sit? And this will change every single time where it sits. So here, taking a little bit of glue at the bottom layer here, that will hold in place. And you go around, all the way around the edge of your container. So I'm hoping, oops, a daisy, that slid off. I'll do one more. And if hoping it's clear that what I've done, it's like all these things, the technique is quite a simple technique. It's just a little bit fiddly to execute. So I've created my A-frame, and then I'm going to spin that round, and I want that one to lay on the container like that. And I think I can see here that it's touching the kebab sticks in two places, once there and once there. So you then go all the way around. It'll be laborious for me to go all the way around, so I'm going to show you one that I have made earlier, like that. So I've gone all the way around, and now you'll start to see that I've actually put some other pieces in. So once you've gone all the way around, you're then looking for a little bit of structural stability. So to stop thinking about that sort of placement of the A-frame, the sort of tongs that have gone all the way around, and you can see I've added in some random pieces just to brace the structure together. So it's reasonably firm. I'm being delicate with it because it's holding, but I'm being quite careful with it because the hot glue can be quite brittle. Now, I don't know whether the camera's picking up on it, but when you use the hot glue gun, you get all these trails that, it's like little spider's webs. And I have heard that if you take a hairdryer, you can melt those away. So I'm not going to do this for a great length of time because it's going to be too noisy for you. But you turn your hairdryer on, and it melts those little trails. So that's just an added extra, really. If you don't like the strands, you can get rid of those. I wouldn't bother getting rid of them as you went. I would wait until you'd finished and then take this off, put it on your table, and then zhuzh around with your hairdryer, making sure you don't burn your hands. So that it will be the first level, and it may well be that when you've got this far, you just think, well, that's enough for me. I'm quite happy with that technique. Or it may be that you might want to think, well, do I want to add flowers into this? And you could come back to the test tubes we've been using quite a lot. You could lash a string around there and then tie them onto your structure, so you could have your fresh plant material. Again, I'm working with pale on pale on pale, so you're going to have to imagine that a little bit. So you could add that. If you decided you didn't want to use this, you could use it as a flower frog and just put your flowers through so they balance the container, putting water in that central well. Or you could, if you wanted to, have this hung vertically as a little wall hanging, like a ray of sunshine wall hanging. So you would have to turn that over, and I would probably put another kebab stick across, and a little bit of string or a little bit of your reel wire, and give yourself a hanger to do that. But what I want to do today is to lay on some of my seasonal textural twigs, which is where my little dog walking treasures come in. So I can snap these off, they're nice and dry, and placing them on for decorative effect. And this will be entirely up to you as to what pleases you. So I could place them on like that. And of course, if I want to keep this, they do really need to be held in place. So I'm going to come and use some of my favorite paper covered wire and cut myself some lengths. I could do this with the hot glue gun again, but I just wanted to show you a different way of attaching your materials once you've got that basic structure. Hot glue gun is great, but I want this to be more about the sticks, not about the glue. So what I'm going to do is bend the paper covered wire in half, and I'm going to sort of hoik it underneath and find somewhere where I can attach the sticks. So I might come down there and angle it a little bit. Oops, come up, mister. There we go. And then get that in place and just twist tight, and that will hold that in place like that. So not everything has to be totally flat, but you don't want it, sort of blowing off in a gust of wind. So what I might do is concentrate just in one area so you can see where I'm going, and then decide, how much of this sort of decorative element that you want to do. So I'm sort of pushing it around, hooking a duck really, like we're at the fun fair. And to begin with, I'm keeping my ties long, because it may be that you want to leave your tie as the decoration, or it may be that eventually you want to put another piece of material and you want to use the same tying point. So I've got my ties here. Afterwards, I may well twiddle them around a cocktail stick to give me a little bit of interest. like this, or I may cut them short. So you've got that option of adding in a little bit of decorative detail there. So I've done that with my my elderberry twigs. This one is quite nice. It's got a bit of the lichen growing on the top. So perhaps I'll just get that bit of lichen on, which is nice and seasonal. Cut myself some more paper covered wire. Bend the wire just so I can sort of hook it under. So it is quite a delicate work. So try not to be too heavy-handed as you come along. So you can see where I'm going with that. You've got your understructure with the nude kebab sticks, and then you're adding in a little bit more decorative detail. If you think that the lichen twigs are too heavy for you, you've got the good old silver birch that you could add in. This one has got materials coming up higher. I've picked them, so I'm going to use them. I'm going to use the same tying point, so just so that I've not got loads of bits of string everywhere. And you build up, you layer up and decide how much or how little of these decorative materials you want to include. So the beauty of the paper cut wire, it's a one-handed fix. You're not actually having to tie knots. And then when you come and, thinking about your decorative materials, this is where my leaves have come. I quite like the fact that as these leaves have dried, my ginkgo leaves, they're sort of drying into a cone shape. And again, I could tie those on in place, although I've got my glue gun, so I might have a little dot of glue. Just positioning it over the top. So this is a good way of disguising the glue underneath, is by gluing something on top. So, and I've kept the little the stalky bits as well, because they're talking to the twigs themselves. I've got that sort of leg kicking out of them, and just start to layer up. And this is quite similar to the rose petals that we used last time that we had this dish. So it's showing you how you can take the same structures and mechanics, but perhaps the roses might say summertime to you, and the leaves here are clearly denoting that we are in the autumn time. And it's just nice being able to change it. And it's the beauty of working with fresh plant material that, this is quite obviously an arrangement I'm making in the autumn time. It's not an all year round arrangement, because I can play with or use the plant materials, as nature intended them at the correct time of the year. So with the little bits of berry here, they're on the little stems. I mean, you could laboriously glue the berries individually on if you wanted to, or find somewhere where they could nestle down inside. And of course, I'm just doing this little one segment of the container here, but you would repeat round. I'm sort of thinking I've done a third coverage really. And if you did want to glue on those individual berries, well, that's just a little bit more time consuming, and just make sure you don't glue your fingers or hurt yourself with hot glue. It's always a good idea to have a damp cloth to one side, and then you can plunge your hands into the cooling balm of a damp cloth. So you could go and take the berries individually. And it may be that you'd have some berries that were grouped in the branches and some which were individually placed. This does sort of add your area of light and shade. So the small berries sort of then become the focal element, something your eye's drawn to, but then the secondary placements could be the individual berries here. It's almost, you need a pair of tweezers to help with your positioning, but that would be the look that we were going for. Obviously, if I was going to make this into a wall hanging, I would suggest you do your fixing to get the wall hanging and actually hang it up, and then add your materials, because when you add things in the horizontal plane, it'll look nice because you're looking down on it, but it will take on a different look once you've got it hanging vertically and upright. So you will need to adjust where you put your materials. And then perhaps just to finish it off, I might embrace these little twirly bits here. Let's see if I can twirl one on the kebab stick as we go around to finish off. And if you don't like these little curls, you would just need to cut your your paper cover wire close to the knot, but not through the knot, because if you cut through the knot, of course, it's all going to unravel, and then you really will have that pickup stick that's causing you problems. So a really easy project, easy in the sense that it's not difficult, the mechanic isn't difficult, but it will be slightly more time consuming, which is why I came in with my made earlier in my true Blue Peter fashion. So what I'll do is I'll bring the camera back to me, and then I'll lift the arrangement up. It's quite nice, I can see it's got depth. Obviously you're looking down and it's 2D, but I am starting to see a sort of depth of vision going on. So I will twiddle it around so you can see exactly what I've been doing. And then you can have a look. So I didn't glue these berries down here, so I will, before I lift it up, I will just glue the bunch of berries down, because they're just going to slide off. So I'm going to try that happy medium of enough glue that it holds, but not so much glue that it burns my fingers and then oozes out everywhere. Right, I think that is stuck. So that is what I have made. I'm imagining it's almost like it's a harvest festival, or it's an autumn walk that you've stuck on a twiggy grid. If I move perhaps this way a little bit, you can see it against the side of my cupboards. So this is the pickup sticks. You see, if I'm very careful, it is still holding, but you can see that if you did want to make more of the kebab sticks, that you could, you could spray paint them all and sort of roll them, have them all laid out in front of you and spray paint them, or imagining, painting the ends with nail varnish or dipping them into paint. So you do get that sort of 3D texture. And I quite like the berries glued on individually. It is painstaking though, so you will need to put your glasses on. And if your hand's not particularly steady, it may well be that a pair of tweezers will help you out. So I have done that purely with, found materials, forage materials, but don't forget that if you wanted to add colour in, you could put your test tubes in, and you could lash them on in the same way we've done before. Struggling now to find the beginning of my bind wire. Or if you added more and more sticks in, the kebab sticks, and had them much tightly packed, so you go around once, go around twice, go around 3 times, your structure would become more and more robust. And then it's possible that you could just slide, if you wanted to do flowers, you just slide them straight in. So this would then become your flower frog. But I quite like the way of having enough sticks that it made a nice solid structure, but not so many that it became something else. It's that happy medium, isn't it? Everything we do with our flowers is just trying to find that right balance between having enough of a structure without then going beyond and then kind of losing the look that you were after. Suggestion here saying green garden cane sticks, that would be good, wouldn't it? So a slightly more robust stick is probably, a green garden cane is probably that long, isn't it? And probably the equivalent of sort of 2 kebab sticks together. So that would be really good if you have got those. Quite often you get those canes as well, don't you? That come with your orchid plants. If you ever save those, they're normally coloured as well, normally sort of a black or a dark brown. They might be quite nice to add in, perhaps as an accent piece if you haven't got enough to do the whole structure all the way around. So I'm hoping that project will have inspired you. And I think for me, it's going to be one of these winter walk ones. Every time I go out for a walk, I'll just pick up, it's just the smallest amount of berries, that perfect leaf that you found. It might be a feather. And instead of, like when you were little, you would stuff it into your coat pockets. Well, I still do that. But actually now I can showcase all those autumn findings and build up my little arrangement over time. So I'm going to draw the video to a close for today. So for those of you who are live in the room with me, we can go straight to our Q&A, and then we can make and create. And probably as we're talking, I'll be doing a little bit more gluing and fiddling, because I've got 2/3 of it that I want to fill out before I take my final photograph. So those of you who are watching on record, I shall say goodbye. And don't forget, if you've got any questions about the techniques, you can ask a question under the video and I can come back to you. You can leave a comment in the group as well, in the Facebook group, ask a question. And of course, I love seeing your pictures. So don't forget to email them to me if you're not on Facebook. And if you are one of my Facebook friends, the fans in the group, if you leave me, you know how to do it now, don't you? Post it so we can all have a look. And it gives us all ideas for how we would do this project next time if we were going to tackle it again. So I shall see you next week for the cuff and the Scots pine needles around the edges. And if you can't find Scots pine needles, you just need to be a little bit creative about what you find around you. So if you're thinking Scots pines too difficult, again, leave your suggestions in the group or under the video, and we can get our thinking caps on for alternative materials.